This is Filming with Josh, brought to you by Rustic River Media. Welcome to the videographer's home for tips, tricks, and how to make flicks.
Hey, what's up everybody? I got a lot of questions last week about my sound bag that I had on set for the BTS video that I showed about the interview project I was doing for a client last week. It was a 4-day shoot and I did a BTS video on day 1 and I showed as part of that video my sound bag, and a bunch of people asked me to explain what was in my bag and what all I used it for, so I thought I would make a quick video to show that off. I also am recording this video on the new Sony 16-35 G Master version 2. I traded in my original 16-35 2.8 for this new one, and I like it. I have the 24-70 version 2 and the 70-200 version 2 GM lenses, which are huge upgrades from the version 1s. This one is as well. It's got the external aperture ring, it's got really fast autofocusing motors, it's really sharp, got great detail, pretty sun stars, and an external aperture ring. Plus it's a little smaller, lighter than the version 1. So if you haven't checked out the 16-35 2.8 version 2 by Sony, go check that out. I'm using it right now, but I think it's a great lens. I've only had it for a handful of days, but so far I really like it. Anyway, let's get in and talk about my audio bag. So what we have right here is a K-Tech audio bag, and inside it I have a Sound Devices MixPre 6.2 recorder. I won't pull it completely out of the bag because I'd have to uncable all this, but I'll kind of show you a little bit of the recorder so you can kind of get a sense of what it looks like. There is the recorder right there. So a little info about the Sound Devices recorder. This is a 6-channel recorder, hence the 6 in MixPre 6.2. It records 2 channels to a 3.5mm jack and then 4 channels via XLR. I typically don't use it for 6 channels. I typically use it for 4, but I have used it for up to 6 before when doing a large live stream event where I just needed to pump a bunch of audio into one place. But this is essentially a field recorder that can also do some mixing. It's an awesome device. A comparable product would be the Zoom F6. This is a slightly better product, and I'll get into why that is today. But on a cheaper level, if you're looking for something somewhat similar, the Zoom F6 is kind of comparable in many ways. But the MixPre 6.2, the reason why I have this is I record a lot of audio directly into my Sony FX6 camera because it has XLRs on board. It sounds great, but sometimes I want to step the audio quality up a little bit. Now, most of your audio is coming really from the mic you use, whether it's a boom mic, a cardioid, a super cardioid, a gun mic, or whether it's a lav mic. But some of it also has to do with the preamps. The FX cameras that Sony has really good preamps. So do Canon cameras. They have really great preamps. But the preamps in a dedicated audio recorder tend to be even better. What this will do is it'll give you a cleaner noise floor. It pumps more preamps into the mic, which decreases the noise floor in the process. So if you have to amplify the volume of the mic, there's not as much noise floor there. A lot of times it doesn't matter, but sometimes it does. And it also records in 32-bit float. Now, I hear a lot of people raving about 32-bit float, and it is great. If you don't know what 32-bit float is, it is just a recording format. Think of it similar to a raw photograph or raw video. It gives you more dynamic range to work with in post. How this can be useful is if you're recording an interview, for example, and someone gets really loud unexpectedly, you have dynamic range there to pull that back. And in post, you can do the opposite as well. If someone ends up being really quiet, there's dynamic range there to pull it up without raising a lot of the noise floor up with it. So having 32-bit float essentially gives you just a wider dynamic range. There's a misconception that 32-bit float can't clip, and that's actually not true. If you're recording at 32-bit float and you have your audio levels set kind of like I have mine set right now, but then you fire a gun, it can still clip. So it doesn't mean that it can't clip, it just gives you a higher dynamic range. Again, kind of similar to working with a raw photograph in Lightroom or working with a raw video file. You just have a little bit more fidelity there. But it is useful. And when I'm recording audio into this mixer, a lot of times I'll hire a dedicated sound guy to run this field recorder for me. And then sometimes I'll do it myself. Last week when we were recording interviews, I shot all 4 days with myself and another camera operator named Joey Chapman. And Joey and I handled the whole project. We did all the lighting, all the sound, all the camera work. And because I was doing all the sound, I benefited from having 32-bit float. You know, I set everybody's audio levels to where it sounds really great, but if anybody ever at any point got unexpectedly loud, I do have some protection there. So it is useful to have 32-bit float. If you're working with a camera like the FX6, you don't have to have 32-bit float. If you're pumping your audio straight in the camera, you can just ride your levels, keep an eye on them. But it is nice to have that as a backup in case you need that extra dynamic range. But really, the reason why I have this recorder over like the Zooms per se is the Zoom F6, for example, can do 32-bit float, but the noise floor is higher than on the MixPre 6.2. Sound Devices is really known as kind of an industry standard brand. They're known for having a really great preamp in their devices that allows you to get a really clean noise floor. The Zooms are great. This is just better. Also, one of the reasons I chose this particular recorder is that you can get plugins you have to purchase them separately from Sound Devices website, but they have come out with some really, really great plugins. One is a real-time noise reduction plugin. It's really cool. Obviously, you want to do noise reduction in post. Well, ideally you don't want to do noise reduction at all, but if you have to do noise reduction, typically you're going to handle that in post. But sometimes it makes sense to do noise reduction real time. A good example, if you're hired to shoot a project on a contract basis, and let's just say you're not handling post-production, but maybe you don't know the editor who's going to be editing the project, or maybe you do, and maybe you know that they're probably not going to take the time to use noise reduction, or maybe they don't have software like iZotope. In that case, if you want to give them clean files to begin with, you can run noise reduction real time. It basically analyzes the background audio, and then it analyzes your subject's audio and can do real-time noise reduction, and you can control the amount of noise reduction just like you would in post. So it's really good. And it works really, really well. I don't use it all the time. I typically would do that in post, but it's awesome to have when you need it. But more than that, there's several plugins that they have, but another one that I use a lot is the Mix Assist. That is a really cool feature. It honestly is the biggest reason I bought this particular recorder. What Mix Assist does is say you've got two people boomed up with boom mics, and person A is here, person B is here. As person A is talking, their boom mic is picking up their audio, but person B's mic is going to also pick up person A's audio, even though they're not right next to each other. And so it's a bleeding effect where you're getting this sound from person A's audio and person B's mic. And because it's not happening at the same time, because the sound waves will go in front of person A's mic first before it gets to person B's mic, it'll create an echo effect or reverb. In post, it's an easy fix. You can just keyframe person B's audio down while person A is talking. And then when person B starts to talk, you keyframe their audio back up and you keyframe person A's audio back down, essentially dubbing each person under each other. And that's fine, and it works really well in post. But the problem is if you're filming something like a live stream where you're not going to be dubbing anything in post, or if you're filming a really long interview, something that's like 30 minutes long, 60-minute style, or maybe you're doing a podcast, a video podcast, and you don't want to sit there and keyframe one person under another over and over again throughout the entirety of like a 30-minute or hour-long video or video podcast, because that could take forever for you to keyframe, hours and hours of your time. Well, this does it real time. What it does is it detects when someone's talking, and whatever mic is close to that person, it can tell when that person is speaking, and it keys them up, and you hear their audio, and it dubs the other person's mic down. And it can do it up to 4 mics at once. And it's a really awesome feature, because if person A is talking, it auto dubs down person B, and then when person B starts to talk, it dubs down person A and picks up person B's. If both are talking at the same time, like they're interrupting each other, both will be keyed up. And as soon as they stop talking, whoever is not still talking will be keyed back down. So it's basically doing all the work for you that you would do in post in real time, and still in 32-bit float. Plus, it saves the raw track of every person's individual audio underneath. So if in post you still want to do something yourself later, you still have all the individual tracks all at 32-bit float for each track, but you also get the mix track. It's really useful. So it's not a feature I use like every day, but when I'm filming multiple people at once, if it's going to be a really long form interview, I can save my editor hours in post by doing the mix real time. And you can still do some EQing and stuff live inside this audio or field recorder so that it sounds really great, so you're handing a really great sounding file to your editor. It still makes sense to have the individual tracks, right? Because you're always going to get the best results when you can edit everything on an individual level. But if you're working against time, or you just don't have the time to do a lot of post-production work, and you don't have time to be keying everybody down for hours on end, it's a really cool feature to have. So I love having that. My biggest usage for it is actually live streaming or video podcasts, because I'm not going to key people down in video podcasts. I don't have time for that. But this does it real time for me, which is awesome. Now this recorder is really cool. It's got, you've got your mixing knobs up here where you can adjust you can either adjust your gain, or you can adjust the mix levels. You've got playback right here, right on top of the recorder. All that is right there. The screen is touchscreen, which is really cool. You've got timecode ports, you've got audio jacks, headphone jacks, things like that. And this recorder also records via two types of batteries. You can run Sony L batteries with an L series battery tray, which I have a bunch of Sony L batteries. I actually have one on the bottom. I have an L series battery in the bottom of this right now. But you can also run AA's with a AA battery tray. So in the front pocket of this audio bag, I keep a AA battery tray, and I keep it loaded with Energizer lithium batteries. That way, if for some reason my L series batteries ever died, I can swap the battery tray out for a AA battery tray and run off of AA's, which is really cool. And you can run a really large size SD card in here, and you can run 32-bit float and have great dynamic range all the time. Now, if you're worried about storage space, you can run 24-bit audio if you wanted, but storage space is so cheap today that I really see no reason not to record in 32-bit float. You can record for days on a large SD card in this recorder, even at 32-bit float, even if all channels are set to that. But anyway, it's got all your XLR ports. It's hard to see right here because I have it in the bag, but you got all your XLR ports on the sides. And what's cool about this particular bag by K-Tech is you can open up the flaps here, so where you can access all your ports and be able to plug in headphones and timecode cables and things like that. And it's like that on both sides. I'll flip it over to this other side here. I got wires going everywhere. If we open this up, you can see again, I've got some XLRs plugged in. So let's talk about where I use this bag and what I use it for. I said earlier that I record a lot of my audio directly into the FX6, and that's true because the FX6 is pretty good preamps. It sounds pretty good. That's part of the reason I like running a camera like that. However, if I'm doing commercial work and I really want to get just the purest quality sound I possibly can with the best preamps, I'll pull this out. I'll also pull this out if I'm doing a bunch of people speaking, or if I want the mix assist or real-time the real-time noise reduction feature. So it depends on the project, but I do use this on my higher end commercial work where I just want the best preamps I can. I also use it for voiceovers. I'm recording a voiceover next week, on next Tuesday. I'm gonna be shooting a project, but I want to use the person I'm shooting. I'm wanting to use their voice for a voiceover. So I'm gonna record it in my truck. My truck acoustically sounds great. Most vehicles do. If you go in your vehicle and you clap your hands, you won't hear much echo or reverb. Like mine's dead quiet. There's no reverb in my truck. So it's actually a really great place to record audio. So we'll go in my truck, kill the engine, have all the windows rolled up, go drive to, you don't want to do it off of a highway where there's cars passing you, obviously, but we'll just go to a parking lot somewhere where it's kind of quiet, and I can record a voiceover straight into this. I'll take a shotgun mic, put it on a pistol grip, plug it into XLR1, and record a 32-bit float voiceover track straight into this recorder. That's kind of overkill for voiceover, but you got it, might as well use it. So it sounds great recording it straight into this bag. I also use this for recording Foley audio. Let's say, like I was in Canada a few years ago, I was getting an aerial shot of some tractors. I really wanted tractor Foley to go with my aerial shot because obviously my drone's not capturing audio, and even if it did, it would sound bad. And yes, you can buy Foley online, but I wanted it to be specific for that exact model tractor, so it was real. So after I was done with the aerial shots, I pulled this out, took a pistol grip with a shotgun mic, threw this over my shoulder, thanks to shoulder strap, and I walked over to where the guy was driving the tractor and just pointed my shotgun mic at the tractor, got pretty close, and just got some nice nat sound. I did the same thing at a river there to get some river sound. So I use it for Foley audio creation as well. And I use it for multi-camera podcasts. If I'm doing multi-people, I mean not multi-camera, but multi-people podcasts, I use it for that. So those are the uses that, that I use this for. And then of course, again, live streaming. So then if you look at this bag, so obviously I have right here, I keep extra cables. I keep extra cables, extra batteries, and stuff like that right here. You can also plug this recorder into DC power via wall plug. So I keep a wall plug right here in this pouch. If I was doing a live stream, I would plug this into the wall so I don't have to fool with batteries. Especially if it's like a multi-day, like days long live stream, like a 3-day event or something. So I keep all that in the front pouch. And then you can see, obviously I have a bunch of receivers on the side of the bag. I run Sony transmitters and receivers. I like Sony wireless audio kits because they take interchangeable batteries. If it doesn't take interchangeable batteries, I wouldn't own it. I only own transmitters and receivers that run interchangeable lens batteries, because to me, if you can't change batteries, what are you going to do when your batteries die? Like, it's just not good in my opinion. So I run all battery powered transmitters and receivers. I run Sony over Sennheiser or Lectrosonics because Sony integrates really well with their cameras. You can run like a dual wireless receiver into your FX6, FX9, etc., and unlock 2 channels of audio. So if I'm running the FX6 and I run a dual wireless receiver in the FX6, that's 2 channels of audio plus the 2 XLR ports, giving you 4 channels of audio in the FX6, which is really useful for like dock work. So that's why I run Sony's. But when I use the same ones for my audio recorders. So here I've got 3 Sony transmitters. I could put a 4th one over here, but I have a tentacle sync right here. We'll get to that in a second. But this allows me to run 3, potentially 4, if I put a 4th one here, 4 channels of 4 wireless receivers all into this audio recorder. And what I'm using these for is either lav mics or boom mics. This particular setup last week, where I have 3 receivers, I was running 3 lav mics for a panel of 3 people that were speaking. So each of these receivers were picking up a different lav track. But I'll do the same thing for boom audio. My boom mics, sometimes I'll run hardwired XLR cables, but a lot of times I like running plug-on transmitters. So I have two Sony plug-on transmitters that can transmit boom mics to my wireless receivers, basically making my booms wireless so I can cut out cables. I don't always do that, but I do it quite a bit, probably more often than not, especially for commercial corporate work where we're moving fast and I need to get set up, get my shot, move on, and I don't want cables everywhere. So this allows me not only to run wireless lapel mics, but also wireless booms. And then over here I have a Tentacle Sync Track E. This is just for Timecode. I run a lot of Timecode. I've done podcasts on Timecode. You could check that out on the Filming with Josh podcast or in the Filming with Josh Facebook group, where I've done many posts about Timecode. All of my cameras are always running at some point in time Tentacle Sync devices on them. This is a Tentacle Sync right here. I'm using it to pump Timecode into the audio recorder. I actually make this the master device, and then I pair all my cameras to this device by putting all tentacle syncs on all my cameras. So all of them are transmitting timecode. So every single camera that I'm using, whereas FX6, FX3, either one of my A1s, they all sync up with my audio recorder and post really quickly by simply matching up the timecode, which you can do in a couple clicks of a button in Resolve, which is great. So this is just generating timecode, and I'm jamming it into this recorder so it's synced up in post with literally a click of a button. I could do interviews for hours on multiple cameras, starting and stopping, and have it all synced like in an instant in post and Resolve. It's really fast, all because of timecode. So I usually keep a Tentacle Sync on the side of this bag for that. And what else is cool is if you're in a pinch and you need some extra wireless mics. I said I don't believe in running rechargeable transmitters and receivers for your primary wireless kits, but it is useful to have a few of these on hand just in case you needed some extra mics. These are Tentacle Sync Track E's. I can run 32-bit float audio recorded straight into this device via a micro SD card. And in fact, that's what I'm recording on right now. If I reach in my pocket here, and I don't know if this is gonna make any popping sounds on my mic, so if you hear any popping, that's why. But you can see I'm using one right now. I'm actually recording my audio into this device, and I'm going to sync it to my FX3 with timecode, which my FX3 is generating timecode right now. So I'm not monitoring my audio, obviously, because I'm filming myself, but I'm recording 32-bit float audio to this recorder and syncing it to my FX3 via timecode. Well, what's cool is I've got several of these. So even though I've got 3 or 4 channels ran to this Sound Devices Mix Pre 6.2 with wireless mics, I can add extra lav mics or lapel mics with these 32-bit float Tentacle Sync Track E audio recorders. So I could theoretically, I could have 50 of these if I wanted to, all recording audio directly into these devices and all syncing via timecode to everything, whether it's cameras, audio recorder, everything is synced up. So if I needed extra mics, I can mic people up with these and record their audio straight in here and sync in post. So that's kind of cool. So I love running Tentacle syncs like this to all my devices, including this recorder, because everything is synced and it opens up the door for adding extra audio with these Tentacle Sync Track E's. Anyway, that's my sound bag. I love this thing. I can run, like I said, I can run up to 6 channels of audio. I typically only run up to 4 channels to it. I can run timecode to it, all 32-bit float, mix assist, real-time noise reduction, among other plugins, and different ways to power it, DC power, AA power, Sony L series power. Just an amazing, amazing recorder with an amazing bag that I can carry it all in. I can throw this over my shoulder, record everything straight in here, and sync it in post with timecode. It's a great setup. Works for me. I really like it. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. See ya.